Welcome to the Wargaming Garage and this 2000 point narrative game, The Wall of Iron. On this Imperial planet, there's obviously some war has been raging, and now there's a final push. It's an old Spearhead mission. There's a final push by the Death Guard to go further into the city, and the last line of defense against them on this is be the Wall of Iron, the Imperial Knight army summoned to hold the line. Basically, these are the old mission cards that used to come with, I think it was chapter approved 2019, something like that. This is the Spearhead mission. So this is the attacker's deployment zone, and this is the defender's deployment zone. Slight tweak on those because this was on a 6x4 table, and obviously now it's slightly reduced. But it's quite simple. The victory conditions on this are just any units that get through, that you add up the points, or in this case a power rating, but we'll do it for points, and you rate it against the attacker's point rating, and then you work out whether you've had a successful a minor victory or a major victory, and so on. So I thought it'd be quite fun to play that game under 9th edition rules and put the Imperial Knights, House Griffith, up against the Death Guard. So let's look at the armies. So starting with the Imperial Knights, this is just under 2,000 points of House Griffith. Well, that's what I'm running them as today. I know they're not the right colours. Nice and simply, we've got 2 Helverins, and with the auto cannons, and then we've got 2 Warglaves. So then, knights wise, we have the Knight Crusader, which is here, with the Gatling cannon and the rapid fire battle cannon. He is the warlord, so he gives out all the buffs. So he's got the Crusader's duty, so in the command phase you can select 1 armiger class, and that improves the ballistic skill by 1. It's got the mark of the lance, so during the charge move, select 1 enemy unit within engagement range and roll a d6, and can suffer mortal wounds on the charge. It's also part of the Exalted Court, so it's got a High Monarch. So it sort of boosts those bondsman abilities. It's a revered knight, so at the start of the fight phase, it fights first. And you sort of add honour points, or start with more honour points, that kind of thing. So then we move on to the Knight Errant, which is the middle guy there, and that's with the Reaper Chainsword and the Thermal Cannon. And again, I can select 1 armiger class in the command phase, and that can advance and charge, adding 1 to its rolls. And then finishing off the army is a Knight Gallant. So this guy wants to get up close and personal. He's got the Reaper Chainsword and the Thunderstrike Gauntlet. And again, in the command phase, it can improve everyone's weapon skill by 1. So the armiger class weapon skills by 1. And it's the master of he's got a warlord trait as well with an upgrade for the master of the joust. So again, he can declare a charge in a turn in which he advanced. So we've got a fingers crossed, we've got an up close and fighter unit, another fighter unit, stand back and shoot unit, with the support of the Helverins, and then the Warglaives, again up close and personal, possibly in line with the Gallant. So that's 1990 points as it stands right now. So with that being said, we'll head on to the Death Guard. And here is 2,000 points of Death Guard. I'm running them as the Ferryman today, which is what I normally run them as, but they're being joined by a Demon Prince today. I know the base size is slightly out, but I mean, come on, look how cool he looks, you know? So anyway, so starting with the Death Guard, with the Demon Prince, there's a few things with him. I'm running him with the Malefic Talons, because he doesn't have any weapons on him, as you can see, and it just looks like it would suit the model. He's also got the old Death Guard trait. They've got revoltingly resilient, so here's a 5-up feel no pain. And he also has the relic, the suppurating plate, so he gets a 2-up save, and he can also deal mortal wounds in return. He's got the psychic power gift of contagion, so he can reduce strength and attacks potentially of enemy units. So that's the Demon Prince. And then the Warlord today is the Lord of Contagion. I'm running him as I would normally run him, Captain Trips there. He's got the droning, which is his Warlord trait from the Ferryman. He's also got an upgrade with unstable sickness, so if he destroys enemy models, then it's less applicable in this one, because it's obviously they've been running around, the Imperial Knights are running around as single units really, but if it was up against a unit of Space Marines, for example, the models that he destroys, he can roll again and deal mortal wounds in addition. He's running the Man Reaper with the Orb of Desiccation as well. So he's, fingers crossed, a bit of a chunky boy and will cause some problems. Backing him up as normal is the Malignant Plaguecaster. No upgrades for him today. We're just running him with Curse of the Leper and Miasma of Pestilence. I didn't want to do the Putress and Vitality because everything feels kind of sort of tough enough. It doesn't matter if I boost everything by 1, because the Imperial Knights are going to be still wounding on 3s or whatever regardless. So it didn't feel, so I thought I'd go for something else instead. Then in the troop slots, we've got 3 squads of Plague Marines. They are what you see. We have the Champion with Power Fist and Plasma Pistol, then a whole bunch of Bolters, Plasma Gun and Blight Launcher, then again Power Fist, Bolter, Bolt, 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 and then a Blight Launcher, and then at the back there we've got the Melee Squad with a Power Fist and Demonic Blade, Cleaver, Mason Axe, Flail Axe, and a Plasma Gun just for good measure. And they'll probably be riding along in the Rhino. In the elite slots, we've got the Foul Blightspawn, who's had the upgrades as you would expect, with Revolting Stench Vats and Arch Contaminator. Then we have the Tallyman as well, to support the whatever he sees in the terms of giving them +1 to hit. We've then got a squad of 3 Blight Lord Death Shroud Terminators, with the Champion having the Reaper of Glorious Entropy, so he gets to deal a bit more damage without any suffering of to hit. We've then got a squad of Blight Lord Terminators, Champion with Axe, everyone else with a sword, a Reaper Cannon and a Flail. In fast attack, we've got 2 Bloat Drones with Plague Spitters, and we've got two of the two small tanks, two actually, with melter guns and the name escapes me now. Melter guns and missile launchers, blight haulers. That's the one. And then the plague burst crawler for some long distance damage if we can deal that out as well. So all in all, that is 2,000 points of Death Guard. So with that, we'll head on to deployment. So here we are after deployment. The Death Guard have deployed obviously relatively conservatively and kept themselves as much out of harm's way as they can, just dependent on, you know, hedging their bets against the first turn. The Demon Prince has come across this side with the bloke drones and the squad of Plague Marines. The Plague Burst, you know, trying to get some behind cover if they can. Same with the Plague Burst crawler. The two blight haulers, another squad of Marines, the Psyker and the Tallyman are down here with the melee squad of Plague Marines and the Rhino. Captain Trips, the Blight Lord, Terminators and the Death Shroud are all in Deep Strike. At the other end of the board, the Helverins have deployed down this side. The Warlord is deployed right in the middle, straight down the centre of the board. The Gallant and the Warglaves have come around this side to try and take this view down the protect this flank of the board. So that's deployment. We need to look at first turn. Obviously, looking at the board, treating everything here, obscuring and ruins and so on. So they're following the usual patterns of the terrain traits. So let's see how many Death Guard can get off of this battle edge, and let's see if the Wall of Iron holds. So to roll off, the red dice will be the Death Guard, the white dice will be the Imperial Knights. This Death Guard, turn 1. So after the Death Guard movement phase, the Blight Haulers came around, as did the Rhino. All three, the Tallyman, the Plague Burst, the Plague Caster, and the squad advanced into the ruins. Around this side, the Demon Prince and the Plague Burst Caller just move in to get some line of sight, and both the bloke drones advanced with this squad advancing into the ruins. So not much doing in terms of we've got the blight launchers in these squads are obviously assault, so they can take those shots. So what we'll do, we'll start off in the psychic phase. There's nothing much to do because everything's pretty much out of range. So what we'll do is move straight on to shooting phase. So we're going to start with these two blight haulers, and we're going to go into this Warglaive here, this first one here. So we're going to start with 2 crack missiles, 1 hit, and doesn't wound. Okay, so then we'll go on to the multi-melters, hit on 3s, wounding on 3s, and that'll go on to the 5-up invulnerable save on the Warglaive. So 5-up invulnerable save, neither one. That's 2d6 damage at this range onto the Warglaive for 5. Okay. So that leaves 7 wounds remaining on that Hellglaive, on that Warglaive. Sorry, Hellglaive. What the hell's that? So then we'll go on to the blight launcher in this squad here. It can draw a line of sight, but it is going over this dense cover here, so it'll be hitting on 4s. 1 hits, 1 misses. It'll be 5s to wound and doesn't wound. Okay. So then we'll come round to this side and we'll do the Plague Burst Crawler into the Helverin. So we'll start with Heavy Stubber. All hit. 2 wounds. And fails 1. So now we'll go for the mortar on top for 3. Okay. So hitting on 3s. Oh dear. Wounding on 3s. That's a wound. -2, so 5 up, invulnerable save anyway, which he passes. Okay. So the last thing to fire will be the Blight Launcher in this squad here. 2 hits, 5s to wound. Rerolling those 1s because it's a plague weapon. And no wounds. Okay. So that's really the end of the shooting phase and the end of the turn for the Death Guard. There's no charges in range. So we've managed to tickle a Warglaive over there, but not much doing. So now let's see how the Knights strike back. At the end of the Knights movement phase, we've done a bit of shuffling around. During the command phase, the Crusader with his High Monarch ability was able to improve the ballistic skill of both armigers, those 2 armigers there, and the wounded one there. The Gallant then gave, again this one, the improved weapon skill, and then we decided to have a bit of a shuffle around. So the melee heavy flank moved forward, he gave the advance and charge ability to that Warglaive as well. So so he's moved himself down the field. The Gallant has just shuffled forward. The Crusaders come back, and the Errant has come back as well, just to try and protect in level of. We know there's some deep strike options for the Death Guard, whereas the Helverins have moved themselves forward to try and hold up that flank of the main concourse. So that being said, we'll move on to the shooting phase. So we're going to start with the Crusader, and we're going to put everything, we're going to split fire, and we're going to put everything from the Gatling cannon into the squad of Plague Marines just there, and we're going to put the battle cannon into the Rhino at the back there. So we'll start with the battle Gatling cannon. So hitting on 3s. So it's strength 6 versus toughness 5, so winning on 3s. It's -2, but they are in cover, so they'll get an additional 1, so it's up to 4s. And it's damage 2, but with Death Guard's damage reduction, we managed to, after all of that, tickle 1 Plague Marine. So we'll go on to the rapid fire battle cannon into the Rhino. So it's heavy 2d6 for 6 shots. Hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. I'll use a CP to reroll that. So that's 3 wounds, -2. So 5 ups for the Rhino. Okay, he takes 3 damage. So we'll move our way around to the Errant, who's got a 30-inch range on his thermal cannon, which will go into that bloat drone there. So it's heavy 2d3 for 4. Hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. Okay. And 1 5-up demon save for the bloat drone, which it makes. Okay. So we'll start with this warglaive here. I'm just going to fire into the rhino. On that warglaive, made a slight mistake on the bondsman abilities, so I've moved him back. He can't advance and charge on this one because that's to do with the errant over there, not the gallant. So I brought him back 3 inches. So his thermal spear anyway will go into the rhino, and his melter gun will go into one of the blight launchers, the blight haulers. So we'll start with the melter gun. He's got the additional ballistic skill because of what the Crusader gave him, so he's hitting on 2s. It's a good job. Wounding on 3s, wounds, and a 5-up demon save on the blight hauler, which it fails. So it's d6 damage, 5 reduced to 4. Okay. So now the thermal spear into the rhino. And both hit. Wounding on heavy, strength 9 versus toughness 7, so wounding on 3s. Both wound. It's -4, so it goes straight through on that because this is filmed after Armour of Contempt and all the balance status later's gone. But I've not worked the points. I've done the list before the points. All very confusing. Basically, we'll just carry on as we are, but we're ignoring Armour of Contempt. So 2d6 damage on the rhino. So 7 wounds to get through, and that's 9. Does the rhino blow up? No. Okay. So six Marines inside, so let's see how many get out. Ooh, only 4. So the thermal spear from the other warglaive will go into the injured blight hauler, but this one's hitting on 3s because he wasn't part of that aura bubble. So 1 hits, 3s to wound, which it wounds, onto the 5-up demon save, which it fails. I'm going to spend a CP from the Death Guard point of view, and it still fails. Okay, so d6 damage for 3, reduced to 2. So leaving that blight hauler on 3 wounds remaining. So moving on to the Helverins, we'll start with the one further forward. So we'll start with his melter gun, and again he's hitting on 2s because of the bondsman ability. So melter guns in, everything's going to go into that lead bloat drone from that first one. So it hits, doesn't wound. Okay, so now for the auto cannons. Heavy 2d3 for 3 shots, hitting on 2s. Wounding on 4s. It's 2 wounds, -2, so onto the 5-up demon save anyway, of which it's completely bossed it. Okay, so rinse and repeat from the second Helverin into that bloat drone, and yeah, into the bloat drone. So hits, and doesn't wound, and 2d3 shots, so that's for 4 shots. All hit, forced to wound, it's 2 wounds, and they both go through, which is 3 damage reduced to 2 damage, so it's got 5 wounds remaining. So we'll move on to the charge phase now, and I think there's only one one charge to make. No, we'll try two. We'll do the Warglaves. That's going to be about a 7-inch charge. This is about an 11-inch, 10-inch charge, I think, measuring it up earlier. It's 11 inches, so 10 to get just in, I think. So we will start with the closest one, but we will spend a CP on Overwatch from that squad of Blight Haulers. So we'll start with the crack missiles. Nothing. So then we'll move on to. So now we'll move on to the melters. One hit. Okay. It doesn't wound. Okay. So on that, I'll spend a CP in that thing. Yeah, let's spend the CP. It does wound. Okay, 5-up invulnerable save. Oh, it makes it. So now, does that Warglaive get in? Yes, yes it does. Does the second Warglaive get in? Yes, I believe it does. No, measuring that again, it's just a whisker out, so it wouldn't be within the inch. So we'll move the Warglaive in and see what happens in combat. So we're going to use the strike profile of the Warglaive's chain cleaver. So again, he's the one that's got the additional weapon skill, so he's hitting on 2s. So it's 4 attacks, hitting on 2s. So all 4 hit. It's strength 10 versus toughness 7. So either which way, it's 3s to wound. Okay, so it's 3 wounds onto the 5. It's -4, so straight onto the demon save. 2 go through. So that's actually 6 damage reduced to 5 damage. So it will kill that one on 3 wounds. Yeah. So because it's 3 damage each, reduced to 2 damage each, it would take that down to 1 wound, and then the second wound would come through and just take out this Blight Hauler. So does it blow up? No. Okay, and with that, the remaining Blight Hauler can strike back. So the Blight Hauler gets 4 attacks, hitting on 3s with his gnashing maul. Okay, 2 hits. Because of toughness reduction, because now the Warglaive is within an inch of this first round, it's forced to wound. We're rolling 1s, no wounds. Okay. That marks the end of the knight's turn. So a little bit done, but not. I think the Death Guard weathered that storm somewhat. So with that, we'll head on to Death Guard, turn 2. So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase for turn 2, during the command phase, the tallyman put his +1 onto the melee squad, and essentially everything else just sort of shuffled forward slightly. This squad of Marines here advanced, trying to get their way down this side portion of the board. The Demon Prince came round, because if the Warglaive does survive the shooting phase, he wants to get in and do a charge. And then up this side of the board, the bloke drones moved on, and the Plague Burst Caller moved up. The Marines moved forward, but then at the end of the movement phase, the Blight Lords dropped in, as did the Lord of Contagion next to the Demon Prince, and as did the Death Shroud Terminators. Now the mission states actually that nothing can start in Deep Strike or anything like that, or Teleportariums. So I slightly modified it to say that they could, but they weren't allowed to Deep Strike past the Defender's deployment zone. So it's sort of they have to join the mission heading up the board. So that's what we did on that one. And so with that, we'll move on to the psychic phase. So we'll start with a smite from the playcaster into the Warglaive, which does go off for D3 for 2. That's 5 wounds remaining, and we'll do another smite from the Demon Prince, which also goes off for another 2. So we've got 3 wounds remaining on the Warglaive. So we're going to start with the Blightlord Terminators firing into the injured Helverin. And we'll start with the Reaper Cannon. So hitting on 3s. They'll hit. Strength 7, toughness 6 now because of contagion range, so 3s to wound. That's 3 wounds, minus 2. So 3 wounds onto his 5 up invulnerable save, and he takes another damage. So now all the shots from the Terminators. 5 to wound, and 4 3 up saves. Takes a further 3 wounds, excellent. So we fired all the bolt guns from the Plague Marine squad. Someone will do the plasma pistol and the plasma gun, doing those together. Both hit. And neither one wounds. Okay. Now the Blight Launcher. 2 hits. Strength 6, toughness 6, so 4s to wound. That's 1 wound. 5 up invulnerable, which she makes. Okay. So working round sort of across this way, we're going to start with we're going to move on to the Plague Burst Crawler. So he's going to fire. He's going to split his fire. He's going to put the heavy stubbers and the spewers into the Helverin in front of him. He's going to fire his mortar up at the errant. So we'll start with the heavy stubber, and they all hit. 5s to wound. No wounds. So what about the Plague Spitters? That's 8 shots. So the auto hit, so strength 6, toughness 6, so 4s to wound, re-rolling 1s. Couple of 1s there to re-roll. Okay. So 5 wounds at -4, 5 wounds at -1. Oh no. Oh no. So now the number of shots for the mortar into the errant. 5, that will do. So hitting on 3s. Oh. Strength 8 versus toughness 8, so wounding on 4s. There's 2 wounds onto the 5 up invulnerable save. 1 goes through, causing a couple of wounds on the errant. So I'll move on to the bloat drones. I'll do them both together because they're going to go into that uninjured Helverin. So I'll do 4d6 flamers or spewers. Awesome. So strength 6 versus toughness 6 now because of contagion, so 4s to wound, re-rolling 1s. So 7 wounds go through, -1, so 4 ups. Oh dear, takes 4 wounds already. We're going to come round now to the other side of the table. We're going to fire this blight launcher into the uninjured warglaive. So hit on 3s. And it wounds. And it fails, so it takes 2 wounds, leaving that one with 10 remaining. And we're not going to fire into this warglaive because I want to use it as a potential movement up the table for the Death Guard with some charges. So that pretty much concludes the shooting phase of the Death Guard. So we'll move on to the charges, and there's a few to declare. So we're going to charge this squad of Plague Marines into the farthest Helverin, and this squad of Blight Lords into the nearest Helverin, for a 7-inch and 9-inch respectively. We're going to charge the Demon Prince and the Lord of Contagion into the Warglaive, and again it's an 8-inch and a 9-inch respectively. We'll then also, for good measure, charge this squad of Plague Marines into the Warglaive as well. So we'll start with the squad of Plague Marines into the furthest Helverin, and they make it in with a 10. The Blight Lords into the really wounded Helverin, they don't make it in. The Demon Prince, he just makes it in. The Lord of Contagion definitely makes it in. The squad of Plague Marines into the injured Warglaive, and they get a 10, so I'll move them around. So the only ones not to make it in really are the Blight Lord Terminators, which is okay. We'll work on that. Okay, I'll move them all in and we'll go on to the fight phase. So, like vultures around a carcass, the Death Guard goes swooping into this injured Warglaive. And as I've never used one before, I'm going to start with the Demon Prince. So he gets 6 attacks, and because he's got Malefic Talons, he gets 1 extra attack. So it's 7 attacks, hitting on 2s. Okay, another good start. Wounding on 3s. Okay, 2 wounds. So 2 4-up save, each one doing 2 damage. Makes neither of them does he blow up. Of course he does. So that gets everything within this blob here. So the Demon Prince suffers 2, or does he? He only suffers 1. Okay. The Lord of Contagion suffers 3. Oh. Okay. The squad of Plague Marines suffers 3 again. The Blight Hauler suffers 1. The Plague Caster suffers 3. Blimey, this is one massive explosion. The Tallyman suffers just the 1, and the Blight Spawn suffers just the 1 as well. Okay, so that's one big explosion causing quite a number of wounds. We'll get those models removed and sorted out and tagged up. We'll move on to the other bit of combat. So moving around to this combat with this Helverin, I'll spend a few CP on trench fighters, so they get an additional attack with the knives, and I forget the name of the other one, but it's basically a 6s to wound do a -4 to go straight through. See if we can start whittling that down and bracket it somewhat. So hitting on 3s. Oh. 5s and 6s to wound. 6s going straight through. Okay, rerolling those ones. Okay. So 3 additional wounds at -1. And the further 2 go through. So now the champion with his power fist. So -1 to hit because it's unwieldy. It's hitting on 4s. That isn't bad at all. 3s to wound. So 6 is required here for the Helverin. If it fails all 3, then that's all the wounds he's got left. Which he does fail all 3. Does this Helverin blow up? No. So I'll remove that model and consolidate those Plague Marines forward, and that will mark the end of the Death Guard turn. So at the end of the Death Guard turn, there's 2 of the armigers that have been taken out of the army, taken out of contention. One admittedly getting quite its own back on the units that took it down, but still the Death Guard starting to make inroads. The bloat drones and the Plague Marines are already at the Aegis defence line. So what can the Imperial Knights do to halt the advance? Knights turn 2. So at the end of the Knights movement phase, command phase, the Gallant put the additional weapon skill onto the Warglaive in front of him, and the Errant and the Crusader move forward from those rear lines just to try and again hold just behind that Aegis defence line. And the Gallant also moved and shuffled slightly forward. So the Helverin stayed where he was. He's just going to try and hold that line there and do as much as he can to inflict as much damage as he can. In fact, we'll spend a CP on machine spirit stuff, so he's considered to have his full set of wounds remaining. Just so it gives him a bit of a chance to inflict some damage. So what we'll do is, all that being said, we'll move on to the Knights shooting phase. And what we'll do is we'll start with that Helverin himself, and we'll put everything into those Blight Lord Terminators. So we'll start with the Melter Gun, which hits and wounds. So it'll be on to the 4 of Invulnerable save, which it fails. Okay, and what's the damage? It's alive on 1 wound remaining after that damage reduction. So now 2d3 for the autocannons, not bad. Hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. Okay, it's 1 wound at -2, so 4 up again, and it kills that 1 Terminator. So now we'll go on to the Errant. And the Errant's going to put everything into the bloat drone that is injured. So we'll start off with the Melter Gun, which misses. So we'll go on to the Thermal Cannon, which is heavy 2d3 for 5. Hitting on 3s. Oh my goodness. Wounding on 3s. Okay. So 2 on Fabric Vulnerable save. It makes 1, fails the other one. What's left to shoot? Yeah, I'll CP that. And it still fails it. Okay, so it's D6 plus 2 from this range. Okay. So 4 reduced to 3, so it leaves that drone with 2 wounds remaining. So now we'll move on to the Knight Crusader. So we're actually going to fire everything from the Crusader into those 2 bloke drones. They've got a lot of movement. They can be getting off this board edge in the next turn, maybe more or less. The Plague Marines I'm not too concerned about at the moment. So we're going to split fire actually. We're going to split fire. We're going to put the Avenger Gatling Cannon into the injured one, and then we're going to put the Battle Cannon into the uninjured one. So 12 shots from the Gatling Cannon into the wounded bloke drone, hitting on 3s. So 5s to wound. So 3 wounds at -2, so 3 5-up saves. He's already used the CP. They're damage 2 each, reduced to damage 1, but that does, he's only got 2 wounds left, so does he blow up? Yes, he does. So I'll sort that out. I don't think anything's in range actually, but we'll sort that out in a moment. So now heavy 2d6 into the uninjured bloke drone for 3. Oof. Okay. So hit on 3s. Excellent. Running on 3s. Not bad. And that is -2 and goes through. Causes 3 damage, reduced to 2 damage. So that's now got 7 wounds left. So the last thing really to shoot will be this Warglaive, and we're going to put everything into the Blight Hauler behind it. So we'll start with the Melter Gun. Hitting on 3s, which hits. Wounding on 3s, which it does. Onto the 4-up, onto the 5-up Demon Save, which it makes. And now for the Thermal Spear. So 2 shots hitting on 3s. Have I used the CP? I can't remember. I don't think I have. Okay, 2 hits. Wounding on 3s. Phenomenal. Okay, with that marks the end of the shooting phase, which was meh. So we'll move on to the charge phase. At this point, we're going to charge that Errant into the Plague Marines, and we're going to charge this Warglaive into the Plague Marines. So the Errant gets in with a 10, and the Warglaive gets in with an 8. I'm doing nothing else because I won't be able to move things in. Because vehicles, I can't go through walls or anything else like that, despite it being a massive, great war machine. Never mind. So we'll move those in, and the Gallant will just hold the line back here and wait for the next wave to come through. So we'll move those in and get to the fight phase. So we're only having to bring him up to the barricade because we can fight over the barricade. That's what I've done. I don't want to move him too far forward. So we're going to fight over the barricade there, and the Warglaive this side has gone in. So we'll start with the Errant, and he's going to go for a sweep attack, which gives him 12 attacks. I'm spending a CP on Pains of Old Knight, so he gets to re-roll wound rolls of 1 against Chaos models. 12 attacks hitting on 3s. So strength 8 versus toughness 5, so 3s to wound, re-rolling 1s. Ooh. Okay. So 9, 6 up saves against the chain sweep. not 1. Okay, it's damage 2 but reduced to damage 1. So that's 1 dead, 2 dead, 3 dead, 4 dead, 4 and a bit. Lovely. So with the Warglaive, we're going to go for the strike attack. I want to try and clear that squad of Plague Marines. So we're hitting on 2s because of the boost by the Bondsman ability. I'm going to spend a CP. Excellent. Wounding on 2s. Phenomenal. It's -4, so it goes straight through and kills one of the Marines. Just one, mind. So the first 2 Plague Marines fought back here. One actually did a wound on a 6 and I failed it, which is good. So that's added another wound on. So now we're going to go on to the champion. They're hitting on 4s. So 2 hits. Strength 8 versus toughness 7 because of contagion, so 3s to wound. 1 wound goes through. So 6 up save. Doesn't go through, so it sets a further 2 wounds off of the knight. So now working our way around to the squad of Marines there. So 6 attacks from the flail. Re-rolling the 1s because of all the contagions nearby. So 5s to wound with the flail. Re-rolling 1s. So 1 wound goes through, which is saved. And now the power fist. All 3 hit. 3s to wound. 2 wounds. 2 6-up saves. Neither go through, causing 4 damage. So he's got 8 wounds remaining. And so with that marks the end of the knight's turn. So wounds and casualties starting to be inflicted on both sides. So far the line is held. So far the knights have done their duty. But how will they fare as we go to Death Guard, turn 3? So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase and the command phase, the Tallyman had no one to put his tally onto, so he didn't. The Death Guard Marines, the Plague Marines, continue to advance down this side of the board. The Death Shroud start making their inroads towards these 2 melee heavy knights. And the Demon Prince and Lord of Contagion stayed still. Everything else, the supporting characters came up. And then around here on this on the Death Guard right hand flank, the Blight Lords moved their way in. The Plague Burst Caller remained stationary, and the Marine stayed in combat, and the Bloat Drone advanced its way forward. It's not quite off the board edge yet, but it could be the first unit to get through in the next turn. We'll have to see. So with that being said, we'll move on to the psychic phase. So we'll cast a smite from the Playcaster into the Warglaive, which goes off for D3 mortal wounds for the big 3, so it leaves 5 left on the Warglaive. We'll then cast Miasma of Pestilence onto the 2 Marines that are in combat, and that just goes off, so they're now -1 to hit. We'll then cast another smite from the Demon Prince, looking for a 6 this time. That also goes off, and that is just for 2. So that leaves 3 wounds left on the Warglaive. So start the shooting phase with the Blight Hauler. I'm just going to fire everything into the gallant that stood behind, standing over its quarry. To start with the crack missile, which hits and wounds, and is saved. So now we'll do 2 melters, and both hit. It's now 3s to wound because a contagion range is now affecting that gallant as well. No, I'll save it. So it has a 5-up invulnerable save, which he makes very significant. Okay, so nothing on that gallant so far. So we'll spend a CP on giving the Foul Blight Spawn some extra range. So let's roll for the number of shots he has. 4. It's too high to re-roll it, so we'll go with that. It's strength 8 versus toughness 7, so 3s re-rolling 1s. And re-roll that one there. Okay, so all 4 go through. So it's -3. So again, 5-up invulnerable save, which he only makes 1, so he takes 6 damage. The Blight Launcher from the Marines on the left-hand flank can draw a bead to him, so he's going to have a pot shot as he's running by. Not surprisingly, missed with 1 because he's sort of as full sprint as a Plague Marine can get, but it does wound. But it is saved. So 6 damage taken on the gallant so far. So then we'll move round to the Plague Burst Crawler. So the Plague Burst Crawler is going to go into the Crusader. So we'll start with some Tracer Stubber Fire, 2 hits, and 2 wounds. Okay. And 1 goes through, so he's taken 1 wound so far, starting to chip away at him. So now we'll go for the number of shots from the mortar for 3. Okay, hit on 3s. Okay, wounding on 4s. Nothing there. Okay, that's. I'll just check that bloke drone. Hang on. No, I can't anyway because he's in combat still. Because I played when he did not fall back. So. That's pretty much it, because I don't want to shoot anything here, because again I want these Blight Lords to go through and then accelerate forward and get them up the board a little bit more and start clearing the way for this Plague Burst Crawler to come up. So that will be the end of the shooting phase. So now we'll start looking at the charge phase. And there's only a couple of charges to make, namely the Blight Lord Terminators and the Death Shroud Terminators are both going to go into their respective armigers. So measuring up for the Blight Lords, it's a 5, but a 4 will get them in. So that's because it's within just less than 5. Just. And the Death Shroud, it's just under 6, so a 5 will get them in. And they are just in as well, but they're there. I'll move them in and we'll go on to the fight phase. So we'll start over here with the Death Shroud Terminator, and we'll start with the champion with his Reaper of Glorious Entropy. So he has 5 attacks and he has no minus to hit because of the relic, so he's hitting on 2s. He's re-rolling 1s because he's in range of Lord of Contagion. Okay, so they all hit. Strength 8 versus Toughness 6 now because of Contagion. So he is wounding on 3s, re-rolling 1s. Okay, so that's 3 wounds go through. That's -3, so 6 up saves, and each one is 3 damage. Ooh. So close. It's not worth the CP to spend because I know way I'm going to roll a 6. Let's try it. I'm not spending it, but let's try it. No, see. So does he explode? No. Okay. I'll remove the model and consolidate everyone who's in combat forward slightly. So moving over here to the Blight Lord Terminators, we're going to start with the flail. So he raises the flail, swings and swings and swings, and hits on 3s. Okay. The tough part here, it's strength 5, toughness 6, because even at contagion, so 5's to wound. 1 wound. So it's 5 up or die for the Helverin. And he saves it. Lovely. And now the swords come in. Again, hitting on 3s. Wounding on 5s again. No wounds. Okay, so now it's down to the champion. Hitting on 3s with his axe. Okay. Running on 4s. 1 wound. Won't kill him, especially if he saves it again. So the Helverin fights back. It's hit on 5s. And he gets 1 through. Strength 6, toughness 5, so wounding on 3s. Doesn't wound. Okay. And that marks the end of the Death Guard turn. And they are making inroads now. Although there's obviously 3 Titanic Knights left, the sort of melee capable side of the Death Guard might make short work of them. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. So with that, we'll move on to Imperial Knights, turn 3. Not quite there yet. We hadn't gone the ongoing combat between the Knight and the Plague Marines. So again, we'll just work that one through, and we'll probably use the sweep profile again. Got 12 attacks coming through, hitting on 3s. The strength 8 versus toughness 5, so wounding on 3s. So that's 6 up saves. Kills 2 of them. Okay. Some morale. Ooh, 5. Let me check that. The champion fights back. Hits once. And wounds. And it's not saved, so 2 more wounds go on to the Knight, to take him down to 17 wounds remaining. So that now does mark the end of the Death Guard turn. I'll double check that morale, but I think he's going to be okay. He's got a leadership 8, so I think he should be fine. So with that, we'll move on to Knights, turn 3. So at the end of the Imperial Knights movement phase, there's nothing to do in the command phase. I don't think there's none of the Armiger class Knights were in range really. So this errant dropped out of combat because he can make a charge the next turn. Make a charge in the same turn in which he fell back, so that's what he's doing. The Crusaders come round. He's going to try and finish this bloat drone off and finish this Plague Marine off. And try and continue to hold this left-hand flank. Down the right-hand side, though, the Gallant, has fell back slightly. Obviously wasn't in combat anyway, but he's come back. He wants to try and deal with what he sees as an easier threat first, and then potentially move his way back to take on the threat coming down the right hand flank. So let's see if that play comes off. And we'll start with just the bit of shooting that we can. We'll fire into combat with the Helverin. It will be, it's probably 6s to hit actually, because -1 with it being in combat. It's already on 5s, so it's heavy 2d3 for the cannons for 4 and nothing. Yeah, cool. So then we'll move on to the Crusader. So he'll fire his melter gun into the Plague Marine, and then he'll put everything else into the bloat drone. We'll start with the melter gun, which hits, which wounds. It's -4, so there's no save, but at this range it basically turns that Plague Marine into mush. So that's stage 1 done for the Crusader, and so everything goes into the bloat drone. We'll get some dice together and start rolling. So 12 shots coming in from the Avenger Gatling cannon. Oh yeah, 5 to wound. Oh, not too bad. So 3 5-up saves. And it makes 2, so it takes 1 more damage. So the rapid fire battle cannon, heavy 2d6. Okay, hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. Oh, I'm gonna have to spend a CP. Yep. So 2 wounds go through onto the 5-up save, which makes 1. So 3 damage becomes 2 damage. So it's 4 wounds left on this bloat drone. Very frustrating. So firing the melter from the Gallant into the Plague Marines, and it hits. It wounds. Again, there's a Marine there on 1 wound, so that just takes out that 1 Marine and just makes life a little bit easier for the Gallant. And that, I believe, is the shooting phase. So, as it's Titanic, as its keyword, he can fall back and shoot as well as make a charge in the same turn he's done that. So he's going to fire his thermal cannon out to this bloat drone and try and take it out. He does not, we don't want any. I know 1 or 2 getting through will be fine, but the Imperial Knights, this house is going to pride itself on letting nothing through. Will hold firm. So it's heavy 2d3 shots from the thermal cannon for 4. Hitting on 3s. 2 hits. Wounding on 3s. It's 2 wounds. -4, so it's onto the demon save. Oh, and it makes 1. Okay. D6 damage. Let me just check actually, I don't think it's within 15. Hang on. It is just out of D6 plus 2 range. So we need a 5 or a 6. It's alive with 1 wound remaining after damage reduction. Okay, it was worth a shot. So now we'll move on to the charge phase. There's 2 charges, the Errant into the Blight Lords and the Gallant into the Plague Marines. They're both really short charges, so we'll start with the Gallant, who's in, and then to the Errant, who is also in. So we'll move them in and go on to the fight phase. Okay, so we're going to start with the Gallant, and we're going to go for the sweep attack on his Reaper Chainsword, because I get to make 15 attacks and it's hitting on 2s. hit. So strength 8 versus toughness 5. So it's running on 3s. So 10 6-up saves. Make none of them. Excellent. So that will kill, because it's a 2 damage weapon, becomes 1 damage. So that's 1 dead, 2 dead, 3 dead, 4 dead, 5 dead. So that's 5 out of the 6 remaining that are dead. Excellent. So now we come round to the errant, going into the Blight Lord Terminators, and we're hitting on 3s. You know, a sweep attack. I know it's more damage with the strike, but I'm looking for volume instead. 3s to wound. Oh dear. So 4 on the 4-up invulnerable save, and 2 go through and kills 1 Blight Lord. In fact, doesn't even do that. Reduced 2, reduced to 1, 2 reduced to 1. So it's taken 2 wounds. There's leaves 1 on 1 wound remaining. After all that, just the Terminator's just tank a knight. Okay. So the Blight Lords are going to spend some CP on Vermid Whispers, giving them +1 to hit, and Eternal Hatred gives them +1 to wound. So we'll start with the flail. So now the flail's hitting on 2s. It's going to go, everything's going to go into this knight here. We're going to leave the Helver in for now. We've got bigger prey to bring down. Okay. So it will be 5s, but now it's 4s, because it's toughness 7. And the flail gives +1, so it's be 5s. So now it's going to be 4s, re-rolling 1s. Okay, so 1 so far. And so 3 wounds. Good, good. So 3 5-up saves for the knight. Ooh, it makes 2. So it takes 2 damage, it's down to 15. So six attacks with the swords, hitting on 2s. Oh dear. Again 4s. We're rolling that 1. Okay, so it's 1 wound. -3 this time though. He makes it. Okay, so now the champion hitting on 2s. Everything hits. 4s again to wound, re-rolling 1s. Whew. Okay, so 2 wounds come through. And makes 1, fails 1. Okay, takes the damage. And now the Plague Marine on the Gallant fights back. So hit on 4s, 2 hits. Wounding on 3s, 2 wounds. And makes 1, fails 1, so it takes 2 more wounds on the Gallant. Does the Plague Marine pass his morale? Absolutely not. So that marks the end of turn 3. It marks the end of battle round 3. And so the Knights are starting to push out. They, unfortunately, looks like they've lost 1 unit going into their defence. It is a bloat drone, but it's got 1 wound remaining. So unfortunately, it's going to get across the line. But let's see what else the Death Guard do in turn 4. At the end of the Death Guard movement phase, the Blight Lords have stayed in combat. The Plague Bear's Crawler stayed where he is. But then on the Death Guard's left-hand flank, everything has pushed up. So the 2 squad, the two-man squad of Plague Marines, they advanced. Everything else has just moved up normally. So we'll start off with, in the command phase, Tallyman obviously didn't do anything in terms of putting his tally on anybody. So with that, we'll move on to the psychic phase. Yeah, the Gallant is the nearest one, so we'll start with a smite from the Plaguecaster. Now, he's only got 1 wound left. So I'm going to have to CP re-roll that. Because otherwise his head will blow up and it'd be not a nice day for everybody. But on a 10, that goes off for D3 wounds for 2 wounds. Okay, so that's 2 wounds onto the Gallant. I'll do Miasma of Pestilence onto the Death Shroud, which also goes off. And then we'll do a smite from the Demon Prince, and that also goes off for D3 wounds for another 2. So that's further 4 wounds put on to the Gallant. So with that, we'll move on to the shooting phase. So we'll start again on this side. We'll start with a Plague Burst Crawler, and everything will go into the Crusader at the back. So we'll start with some Trace Heavy Stubber. They all hit. And 1 wound, which is failed. So 1 wound goes on to the Crusader. So the number of hits from the mortar for 1. Okay. Hits, wounds, and doesn't save. So that's a total of 3 wounds onto the Crusader. He's got quite a few remaining though. So moving across now to the Blight Hauler, we'll do a crack missile into the Gallant, which misses, and then a multi-melter and 2 hits. 3's to wound. It's 2 wounds and 2 5-up invulnerable saves required. Neither. Do I want to CP that? Yeah, okay. Nope. Okay, so I'll just check the distances, hang on. He is within 12, so it's D6 plus 2, or 2D6 plus 4 as it is. Okay, so that is 5 and 3, so 8 wounds. He's only got 8 wounds left, okay. So again, spending a CP on the Blight Spawn to give him overwhelming generosity, to give him some extra 6 inches on his number of shots. So let's see what we get. Now here's the thing. I've got the re-rollable thing, so yeah, let's go for it. Let's do another re-roll. That's even worse. Okay, so 2 shots. So 3's to wound, re-rolling 1s. So it's 2 wounds. And he saves them both. Okay, so he's got 8 wounds remaining. And with that, there's nothing else left to shoot. So we'll head on to the charge phase. And we're going to charge the Death Shroud into the Gallant. And I think I'm going to charge Captain Trips into the Gallant as well, but I'll just measure up and see what distances we've got. So it's a 6 for the Death Shroud and a 9 for just inside 6, so a 5, sorry, and a just inside 9, so an 8 for Captain Trips. So let's go for the Death Shroud. No, but I do want them in. And they get in. And now for Captain Trips. but he doesn't. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. The Death Shroud should be able to do this on their own. So we'll move them in and we'll go on to the fight phase. So starting with the champion, and he swings his Reaper, hitting on 2s. That's not bad. He's outside of reroll range now. So strength 8 versus toughness 7. So wounding on 3s. That's 4 6-up saves. If he fails 3 of these, he's dead. So it's 3 damage, 6 damage, 9 damage. He only had 8 wounds left. So, does he explode? Oof, no. Okay. And now we'll move on to defending units fight first. So we'll start with the errant, and it's hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. That's 2 wounds. 2 4-up invulnerable saves. Both fail, so it kills a 1-on-1 wound and kills another. It's minus because it's 6 damage. Now the flail strikes back. Oh dear. And makes a wound, which is failed, so puts 2 more damage onto that knight. Got 12 remaining. Now the champion. That seems destined to go on and on and on. So the Helverin will fight back. Hits 3 times despite his profile. And doesn't wound. Excellent. Right. So with that, that marks the end of the Death Guard turn. So let's see what the Knights can do. See if they can hold the line for Knights turn 4. So in the Knights movement phase, we've spent a couple of CP, first few CP, so we're putting this guy on full profile again, but we've also spent the CP, which means he can fall back and shoot. So that's really it. The errants fell back as well, knowing that he can actually shoot, and we're going to try and take out the Plague Burst Caller on the end there. And as has the Crusader, he's moved back down to the right hand flank to start taking shots and see if we can get rid of things like the Blight Haulers and start making work on things that are coming towards him or near him, like the Death Shroud. So we'll start over on this right hand flank and start with the Helverin firing everything it has at the Blight Lords. So start with the Tracer Melter, which hits, which wounds and fails. I'm going to spend a CP for the Death Guard and passes. Oof. Okay. So heavy 2d3 from the autocannons for 2 hits, 2 wounds, and again 4 ups. And that's fail. That kills a model because it's damage 2, so that kills 1 more. So we'll move on to the Errant, and the Errant's going to split fire. He's going to put his melter gun into the last remaining Blight Lord, and he's going to put his thermal cannon into the Plague Burst Crawler. So again, we'll start with some Tracer Melter, which hits, which definitely wounds. 4-up invulnerable. No, and I've already used the CP. So at this range, it is D6 damage. Let's see what we can do. Oh, he's alive with 1 wound remaining because of damage reduction. So powerful with the Death Guard. So heavy 2d3 from the thermal cannon into the plague burst crawler. For 4. On 3s. Oh dear. Wounding on 3s. Ooh. Okay. 5 up invulnerable save, which it fails. So d6 damage. Okay. So now we move on to the Crusader, and he's going to put the Avenger Gatling Cannon into the Plague Marines and the Rapid Fire Battle Cannon into the Blight Hauler. So we'll start with the Avenger Gatling Cannon. So 12 shots coming in, hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. So Death Guard needs 5s to save. Oh, none of them. Okay. Okay, so now can the Crusader spin up his battle cannon and actually get a half decent set amount of shots into the Blight Launcher? Oh, yes, he can. So 11 shots hitting on 3s. Wounding on 3s. Oh, no. Right. I don't think I've spent the CP. If I have, forgive me, but I don't think I have. That's 3 wounds come through. So 5 up saves required by the Blight Hauler, which it makes none of them. Now it is 3 damage a pop. So that is 3 reduced to 6. It's got 2 wounds remaining. And with that, the Crusader decides to charge into the Death Shroud and stomp them. Of course he does. He's got 4 attacks, hitting on 3s with his Titanic feet. Okay, and manages to, one of the Death Shroud dodges and weaves. Strength 8 versus Toughness 5, so 3s to wound. Again, manages to dodge 1. It's -2, so 4 up invulnerable saves. Oh, neither are made. So it's 2 damage each, reduced to 1 damage each, and it still doesn't kill one. Still on 1 wound remaining. So let's see what the Death Shroud do to fight him back. So the Death Shroud will spend a CP on Vermid Whispers, and we'll spend a CP on Eternal Hatred, so, or the 2 CP, whichever one it is. So we can actually +1 to our hit rolls and +1 to our wound rolls. So we'll start with the champion, who's hitting on 2s anyway. Drops 1. He will be wounding on 3s, now he's wounding on 2s, re-rolling 1s. Okay, so that's 4 go through, so 4 6-up saves required. And makes 1, but takes 9 damage. Okay, so I'll keep a tally of that. It's not looking too good for the Crusader now. So the other Death Shroud are now back to hitting on 2s. And with +1 to wound, strength 7 versus toughness 7 because of contagion would be 4s, but it's running on 3s, re-rolling 1s now. Oh dear. Oh dear. That's not so great. So 2 wounds, which are both passed anyway. Wow. Okay. So that Crusader had a wound plinked off it, a couple of wounds plinked off it, and with an extra 9, it's certainly bracketed, but it's certainly still there. So that marks the end of Imperial Knights turn 4. They are holding up. There's this turn 5 and there's not much chance left for the Death Guard to actually start advancing through. So down this right hand flank for the Death Guard, there's not much left, but we could still do and get rid of one of these Helverins, the last Helverin there, and maybe do some damage to this errant. But on the Death Guard's right hand flank, well, let's see what happens, because maybe even though it's turn 5 and there's only one little bit have gone off the table, if there's none of these knights left, then let's see what the story says. So at the end of the Death Guard movement phase, we've stayed in combat with the Blight Lords. I had a big sort of think to myself whether I want to do that or not, but I think I do. I think I want to leave them in combat, and then whilst I know it hampers somewhat the target priorities for the Death Guard, I think this could be the way, and put as much shooting into the errant whilst we leave the Crusader to be whittled down with melee and psychic and so on and so on. So I think that's kind of where I'm going to go with it. So after the movement phase, we brought the Blight Lord has come through, the Plague Burst Call has come up, and everything is essentially just shuffled forward, just to try and get as close as we can to do as much damage as we can. So with that in mind, we'll move on to the psychic phase. So we'll start with a smite from the Plague Caster, which goes off, and that's going to go into the Crusader for 3. That's 3 wounds so far. And then I'll do Miasma of Pestilence on to the Captain Trips, which doesn't go off. Okay. Then another smite from the Demon Prince, which doesn't go off. I'm on the last stage of the game, so I'll CP that. It still doesn't go off. Okay, so 3 wounds taken. We're down to 11 left. So with that, we'll move on to the shooting phase, and we'll start with the Plague Burst Crawler, and we're going to split fire. We're going to put the Plague Spewers or Plague Spitters into the Helverin, then everything else is going to go into the errant. So we'll start with the Plague Spitters for 9 shots. So strength 6, toughness 6 now, so 4 to wound, rerolling 1s. Okay, so 6 wounds at -1. So 6 wounds at -1, so 6 4-ups. Will this take the Helverin out? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So does the Helverin blow up? No. It just melts away under whatever disgustingness came out of that Plague Burst Crawler. So that, so far, so good. So now I'll move him in a minute. So now we'll do the Tracer Heavy Stubber into the Crusader, into the Errant, sorry. All hit. And no wounds. Now the number of shots for the mortar for 4. It's not bad. So hitting on 3s. That is bad. Wounding on 3s now. And it wounds. And it's saved. Okay. So we'll move on to the Blight Hauler, who's going to put everything into the errant, and we'll start with a crack missile, which hits and doesn't wound. And we'll start, then move on to the multi-melters, both hit, both wound, 2 5-up saves. No, none go through, both go through. Let's CP that, I may as well. One goes through. That's 5 damage. So now, really the only thing left to do is charging, and we're going to charge both the Demon Prince and Captain Trips into this Gallant. I'm going to charge the Blight Lord into the errant as well. There's 9 wounds to get through. There's a lot to get through there, but yeah, we'll see. So we'll get measured up and we'll do some charge rolls. So they're relatively short charges. Let's start with Captain Trips, who's in. The Demon Prince, who's also in. Blight Lord Terminator is not in, so I'll spend a CP to re-roll that. Don't think is in either. Let's have a look. It was just enough to get in, just enough to get in for that Blight Lord. So we'll start with the Lord of Contagion. Leave him to me, he screams into the Vox. Leave him to me. Swings his cleaver, hitting on 3s because it's unwieldy. And they all hit. They're bound to. He's been around for 10,000 years. Strength 7 versus toughness 7, but it is forced to wound. Re-rolling those ones with a plague weapon. Two wounds. It's -3, so 6-up saves. And he makes one and fails one, so it takes 2 more damage. So now the Demon Prince lines up his malefic talons, hitting on 2s. And 6 hits. Forced to wound, strength 7, toughness 7. 3 wounds come through. So 3 wounds come through, -1, so 4-up saves. And 1 more goes through. Come round here and we're going to spend some CP again on Vermin Whispers and the Eternal Hatred. So it's +1 to hit and it's +1 to wound for the Blight Lord Terminator. So it's hitting on 2s. That's a good job. And he's wounding on 4s now. Re-rolling 1s. Okay, so 3 wounds come through. It won't be enough to kill him. Oh dear. And so the Knights fight back. And we start with the Crusader. He has tight, stompy feet. Everything's going to go into the Lord of Contagion. So with 6 wounds left, he is heavily bracketed. Sorry, 7 wounds left. He's on his middle bracket, so he's hitting on 4s. 3 hits. 3s to wound into the Lord of Contagion, and all 3 wound. So it's on Lord of Contagion's in run save, and 2 go through. So it's 2 damage, becomes 1 damage, so it's taken 2 wounds. It's got plenty left. The errant reaches up and uses his strike to see if he can strike down this Blight Lord Terminator. So only got one wound, he needs to hit one, and one needs to go through, that is all. And nothing. With only 5 wounds left, nothing hits. And with that is the end of the Death Guard turn. So we just quickly move on and do the Imperial Knights turn. So at the end of the Knights turn, both brothers, the Errant and the Crusader, fall back out of combat and hold the line. They stand firm where they wait for reinforcements to bring in behind them and improve the blockade on this Death Guard force. Have they done enough? Time will tell. So this Crusader, this warlord, he's mad. He wants to send everything he can back, howling back to the warp. So he levels his thermal cannon, he levels his rapid fire battle cannon and takes aim at the Blight Hauler. Does 8 shots. Now we're hitting on 4s. Only 3 hits go through. Wounding on 3s, only 1 wound goes through. But it is a successful wound. It's just enough to send the demon engine, turn it into scrap and send the demon howling back to the warp. Does it explode? No. Then he levels his Avenger Gatling cannon and fires everything it's got left into the Death Shroud Terminators. In on 4s. Wounding on 3s. It's just 2 wounds. And manages to take the one that's on 1 wound, collapses at his captain's side. Then we move on to the Errant, who's got one thing in mind, which is take down that Blight Lord Terminator. Wants it vanquished from the face of this planet. So 2d3 shots with the thermal cannon for 2. Hit on 5s. 1 hit. Wounding on 3s. 1 wound. 4 invulnerable save. No. The Death Guard player is going to CP it because he's super annoying. Still no. And all that's left in a flash of light, like the centre of a sun, Blight Lord Terminator just vanishes. And with that, that's how I think the story is going to end. The Knights held the line. Behind them, planetary reinforcements came in, armies of the Imperium, made planetfall and bolstered the lines. They sacrificed a lot. 4 Helvrins and a whole night, and they didn't get out of it unscathed. But they did hold the line. And that's how this story ends. I hope you've enjoyed it. A bit of fun, a bit of a different narrative mission from 8th edition, and hope to see you again soon.